Welcome, creatures. When it comes to pianos, what do you got? There's sample libraries, there's synthesized sounds, and there's also a nifty little thing called physical modeling. Of course, there's also recording the real thing, but I mean, how many of you could fit a full piano in your, tiny room? But I digress. Two of those things that I mentioned are synthesized, and one of them is just a little bit more accurate to the sound of a real piano than the other, and that's the physical modeling sound. But there's something that's fascinated me for a little while now. I even featured this in previous videos, and that's resynthesis. Resynthesis is a process of converting audio into a synth waveform. It's not new technology, as it's existed as a concept since the 60s and 70s and implemented as early as the New England Digital Synclavier in the early 80s. Today, it's available in a number of different applications and virtual instruments, including Arturia Synclavier, Rapid, Icarus, and Phaseplant, just to name a few. In Icarus and Phaseplant, which I am using today, the output of the resynthesized sound is in the form of a wavetable. Now, before going straight into the conversion, I do want to mention that this isn't a perfect way to resynthesize or even synthesize piano sounds, just in general, since at least the way that I'm doing it, I have one wavetable, and therefore I'm only using one sample to convert. The downside to this is that if I were to play the sound higher or lower on the keyboard, it would be the equivalent of just using one piano sample and stretching it across the entire keyboard range. The reason this is a downside is because a piano does not sound the same across the entire keyboard. The timbre actually changes. Higher notes tend to actually be a bit more mellow, and the lower notes have more harmonic overtones. But with that all out of the way, what do? Pick a sample, drag it into the wavetable editor, and play a note. Here, we can hear that the sound is mostly unchanged from the sample, but there is some weirdness with the sound. Can you hear this weird, slightly subtle fluttering? That's the resynthesis engine processing everything in the sample, including background noise, tuning imperfections, and other artifacts. While we may not perceive these parts of the sound, the computer still does. In this window, we can click on different parts of the waveform and set these points. These will define different frames in what will become the final wavetable. Every part of the sample waveform between these frames will not be defined. So what'll happen is the sound will blend from one of those frames into the next one. Now, keeping that in mind, let's set a few frames here and listen to the sound. Sounds a bit fake, incomplete, synthetic, not piano-like. Now, one of the reasons for that is quite simple. If we want to retain the sound of the piano actually has a lot going on at the attack part of the sound. So if we were to look at the original sample waveform that we see here, you can tell that there's a few dips and valleys and some other peaks and stuff right at the beginning of the sound. And if we were to hear this on its own, with the flutteriness and everything, there's quite a bit of information right after the attack. So what I'll do here is I will add more frames near the start of the sample by clicking, dragging these very, very close together so that I can keep that level of detail. You can hear a little bit of that already starting to take shape. Even though it sounds harp-like right now, we will fix it later. Another thing we can do is move these. Now, this is actually important. All of these points down here that we click on, those are frames for the final wavetable. But we can set where those frames are going to scan from the sample by moving these arrows up here. So I want to scan most of the detail at the start of the sample as much as I can. And so I'm going to have these points much closer to each other. It's taking more shape. So let's go and clean that up a little bit more. Okay, so the attack part is all taken care of. Now, what about the tail here? Let's add some frames and see what we can get out of this. One thing that I found about resynthesizing sounds, especially with a sample like this that has a lot of information at the beginning, but a more consistent sound for the rest of the sample, is you don't need to add this many frames for the consistent part of the sound because you can actually keep it smoother by having less frames. In the original example where there's a little bit of that weird fluttery sound, so that's because of the resynthesis engine kind of trying to process everything that is in the sample. And so if you have more of those frames in the final wavetable, you're actually going to set more points for some of those weird inconsistencies to actually come in through your sound. With this, thankfully, the actual decay of the sound is quiet enough that I don't think those are coming through as much. But the important part that I found is for the detail in the sound, wherever it is, you want to have more frames for that so you can actually keep that detail. Now in Faceplant, the way that I'm controlling the scanning of the wavetable is with an envelope here, and I have it inversely controlling the frame position here. It's starting at the end at 256. It jumps up with the attack so that it goes all the way to 1, and then it progresses through to 256. I'm going to change the slope here so it doesn't sound as weird. It sounds a little too harp-like. And it sounded closer to a piano sound. Now, it's still not quite there because resynthesis is not that perfect yet, at least not this form of resynthesis. Physical modeling, I think, is actually closer. The sound that I played at the beginning of this is actually a set of multiple wavetables of multiple converted piano samples covering the entire keyboard range so that it sounds a little bit more accurate to a piano sound. I haven't figured it out yet, but it might be possible to do that with a single oscillator instead of doing multiple oscillators. But of course, I wouldn't be able to do it this way by having one sample and then scan all the way through. I would have to probably figure out how to set positions based on where I'm actually playing on the keyboard. But again, I haven't figured that part out, but I'm sure it's possible. But while we're here, can we resynthesize other sounds? Of course we can, why not? This one is a synthetic pan flute. What about a snare drum? Not every sound that you try to resynthesize is going to sound nice or pleasant, but it can give you interesting results kind of like this. Another interesting thing is if we were to have fewer frames and then resynthesize something from this instead. We get an interesting little synth sound. This is a vocal sample. Now, the breathiness of the original sample actually makes this kind of difficult. Do we want to add more frames or do we want to add fewer frames? Let's see what this gives us. Personally, I think more frames actually works for this. It's cool, it sounds almost chorused. For this next sound, the original sample sounds like this. And the initial wavetable import sounds like this. With all the frames set, the final wavetable sounds like this. Now, instead of just a simple vocal sound, what if I were to put in something that is mostly, almost entirely noise. I have here a sample of breathing. This is what it sounds like on the initial import. I haven't made any changes to it just yet, but if I were to do that at certain points, go into here. I end up with a very kind of glitchy, pseudo-breathy type of synthetic sound. It's very robotic. There's some formity-like information here, and a lot of overtones, and they're quickly shifting over time between each of the frames that I've set. Let's actually move some of these frames, so that some of these ones that were really close to each other are not as close to each other. Move some of these. Of course, I should actually extend out the decay of the envelope down here. And now it's going through the wavetable much slower. Sounds really cool fast. This next sample is a sample of steel. Imported into the wavetable editor, it sounds like this. You can hear that there is still a little bit of the fundamental tone that it's trying to capture. If I were to play the notes lower, it is a little bit noisy, but the original sample is not so noisy as much as it has both harmonic and inharmonic overtones. Let's go and add some frames. More at the beginning, fewer for the tail. You can hear that fluttering that I was talking about during the piano sample at the beginning of the sound. You can hear it more as I bring out the decay. So sometimes having more frames at certain parts of the sample doesn't actually get you a smoother, cleaner sound. And what does this sound like? It's the smoothest, cleanest sounding, but it sounds much more synthetic because everything is trying to be phase aligned to line up with a C, which I was playing there, and a lot of the noisier elements have been smoothed over. Now this next sound that I have, the sample sounds like this. Now, what's interesting about that sample and samples that sound like that is that, at least with phase plant, you can maintain most of that sound in the final wavetable because of what information is there. In that sound, there are a lot more harmonic and tonal elements than inharmonic ones, and so when I put the sample into phase plant, it sounds like this without any edits being made. Since there's a lot less noise, it's easier for those tones in the original sample to be synthesized into overtones. So if I were to add frames to the sound, I could get something like this. I can extend the decay length. I can shorten it. But there are samples out there that, as long as they have those waveforms that are mostly in tune, don't have a lot of noise, a lot of inharmonic elements, if you put them into a resynthesizer, you can maintain a lot of the original information from that sample. And that's basically what resynthesis is all about. In summary, resynthesis is a pretty cool tool that allows you to take samples of acoustic instruments and turn them into synthetic ones. You can turn FX sounds and other non-instrument sounds into synthetic sounds. And you could take tonal sounds and turn them into an entirely new synth preset. For example, let's say that you have a really cool sample that you like, but it's only one sample, and you want to be able to play it across your keyboard without worrying about it speeding up with the higher notes or slowing down with the lower notes. If you were to resynthesize it, the length of the sound can be maintained unless you wanted to key track that. Or let's say you didn't want to have any of those unwanted sampling artifacts that come with just playing a sample. Resynthesis can get rid of those issues as well. Now, it's not perfect for totally recreating sounds like you saw me earlier trying to foolishly hone in on a piano sound, but it is an interesting alternative to synthesizing things in other ways. Alright, I'm back with that piano sound that I resynthesized earlier. It sounds kind of harp-like, so we can do things with our envelope here to make it sound harp-like. We can, of course, shorten the length. Almost sounds like pizzicato strings, actually. Bring out the release a bit. What if I were to do something drastic, like have the slope be the other way? Give it some weird attack. What if I reduce the amount that it's controlling the frame position, bring the frame position up here, and got something like this? Now it sounds almost like a pseudo-bowed piano type thing. It's an interesting synthetic sound now. Almost brass-like. I'm gonna add some modulation to the pitch. That's not fast enough. I'm also going to assign the LFO to the frames and see what that does. Interesting. Now we have the actual timbre modulating too because of that. All of that from a piano sound, a piano sample converted into a wavetable, and I'm just using an envelope and other controllers to set the position of the wavetable so that I now have a completely different sound because, you know, that's what you can do with wavetables. I was showing how to make the sample into the wavetable, but of course you can do things with the wavetable even after that. Now it sounds a little bit like an accordion, actually. It's funny. that was originally a piano. And of course, if you were to use something like Faceplant, you're essentially using wavetable synthesis, which means you can do even more with the sound even after you've converted the sample, like I showed with turning that piano into an accordion, or at least it sounded like an accordion to me. I don't know my instruments. I don't know. I don't even know what a piano is. What? Anyway, that's Resynthesis and other tidbits. I'll see you again someday, creatures. Later.